Okay. Hi, everyone. Got my screen here. Welcome to June 2026. I can't believe it. In our today's issue of Symbiota Support Group, we are going to be talking about a very popular subject that we have had a Symbiota Support Group on, but that was, can you believe it, 4 years ago? It's crazy that we've been doing it this long. So we thought that it would be about time to kind of talk through the process again, and there are some updates that have been made since that previous video was made. So we want to make sure we're touching on those new things and then just going through the whole process fairly rigorously so that everyone knows what to do. So without further ado, let's talk about how to upload data into a Symbiota portal. And there are multiple ways that you can do that. You can do that through full text files, skeletal text files, Darwin Core Archive imports, and then IPT imports, which are kind of just a subset of Darwin Core Archive imports, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then, of course, we'll have some time for questions. Well, we'll try to make time for questions, but if there are more that we can't cover, then we can cover those at a future group meeting. Okay. So there are multiple upload types, like I just said. And where can you find those? You can find them in your administration control panel. So a data editor cannot batch upload specimen data, so they can't upload files. And that is because it's a semi-complicated process, and so you want to make sure that whoever is doing it is fairly confident in what they're doing or has those permissions. So what I'm going to show you is how to get to all these, to this administration control panel. You just go to My Profile, and then you click the name of the collection that you want to manage here, down here. So there's a little bullet here that says Import Update Specimen Records. You click that, and then you'll see the drop down of all of the different types. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through kind of the main types you're going to use. One of them is skeletal file uploads, and the intention of skeletal file uploads is when you are adding very minorly populated records, or you have already very minorly populated records, like say just a catalog number and a country, and you want to add additional data to it. So one of the important points about skeletal file uploads is that they can only add data to blank fields. Big change there, or a big important piece there. Only putting data in blank fields. It does not overwrite pre-existing data. So again, this is really only appropriate for if you're trying to fill in some data that was blank beforehand. So I'm going to try to put this, kind of visualize it. So what if you have a bunch of records that just have catalog number and country, and they have nothing in state and county? Then you have a spreadsheet or a CSV file that has catalog number, state, and county. What would your final upload look like? This is like a pop quiz. What it would look like is, because it only puts data into empty fields, it would match on catalog numbers, and then it would put the state in the state field and the county in the county field. So you would end up with catalog number, country, state, county, as you would expect. Great. Where this becomes a little bit confusing is when you have, let's say, a spreadsheet that has data in it that's different than what has already been entered in the portal. So let's say I wanted to replace all my USAs with United States, and so I tried to do that with a skeletal file upload. Well, that's not going to replace my USAs with United States because, again, skeletal file uploads only ever put data into blank fields. So it's going to say, this isn't blank, so I'm not going to put this value into this field. It will still put Oregon into state, well, Oregon into state, Benton into county, but it has only filled in empty fields. So this can get a little bit messy if you use skeletal file uploads and you like forget what fields already have data in them. So just use these with caution. And so when you're uploading data for several fields, you should make sure that there's not already data in some of those fields that you're trying to upload into. So a good example would be, say someone georeferenced your specimens outside the portal and you want to put data, those georeferences back in. Well, you might want to be thinking about, I wonder if someone has already gone into the portal and tried to georeference it and put something in the georeference remarks and said, couldn't do this, don't bother. But someone else, like in your spreadsheet, put those coordinates in. In that case, what you could end up getting is coordinates and then georeference remarks that say, we couldn't georeference this, don't bother, because those were put in using different methods. The one was just entered in the portal, and then one was imported in as a skeletal file upload. So just be aware of that. So one way to check that you have or do not have data in certain fields is to use the record search form. So if I go to edit existing occurrence records, and then you say, let's make sure that my records, is null or is not null. You could look up the specific catalog numbers that you're going to input. Or, you can export this as a CSV, download it, kind of do a cross comparison to make sure that you're not accidentally getting some sort of conflict using your skeletal file uploads. Okay, let's see, and Alan asks, I presume NA and quote unquote are not blank. Null equals blank. I don't know if you're going to, so you're like in your upload file. If your upload file has blank values in it, then those are going to be interpreted as null in your import. Okay, so full text file uploads, those are quite different. It's going to replace your entire record by overwriting all the pre-existing occurrence data with your incoming file. So let's say you had just a file that said catalog number, or in the portal it says catalog number country, and you have a spreadsheet and you're like, oh, I want to put the state and the county fields in there. If you used a full text file upload, what the portal is going to see is this record, this line contains all the data that should be associated with this catalog number. So then in the end, if you upload it into the portal, it's going to make country blank because there was no country field in your importing file. So you just got to be really cautious when you do full text file uploads. They're intended to upload new data. That's probably the safest way to use full text file uploads, because you might miss some fields in your upload that should actually be in there. So again, you're overwriting that whole line basically. So if you wanted, this is similar to our second example for our skeletal file upload, is that if you do want to overwrite everything, that's great. If you add this record to this catalog number using a full text file upload, it's going to completely overwrite the previous data you had. So if you were trying to replace your USAs with United States, no problem. Full text file upload will do that. One caveat is that the full text file upload replaces entire records by overriding pre-existence occurrence data. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky and kind of databasey. What constitutes occurrence data is the main um, scientific name, collector, date, things like that. Things that are not occurrence data are images, determinations, and annotations. So those are all the previous scientific names. Links to duplicates, links to checklists, occurrence relationships, traits, and exicati. All of those actually do not get replaced when you do a full text file upload. So if you're trying to like, I just want to clear out all these old determinations and stuff, I'll do a fresh full text file upload. It's actually not going to clear those out because those in kind of database world, those are in different tables, and it's only replacing the line in that one table. So if you really want things like completely cleared out, just talk to your portal administrator, which might be the Symbiota Support Group hub, and we can help you clear out data. Okay, another kind of big picture thing I want to talk about is that uploading data is different between live and snapshot collections. Live collections, so those who are actually doing their data entry and editing directly in the portal, with the exception of some spreadsheets, those uploads will match on catalog number or other catalog number, also known as alternative identifiers. When you upload a snapshot collection, though, you're not actually matching on catalog numbers. You're matching on a back-end unique field called DBPK. That stands for Database Primary Key, because the assumption is that if you're uploading data into a snapshot, then you are managing your data in some other database system. And there's probably a primary key or a unique identifier applied to that record in your database. And so that's the one that the portal should be matching upon when you're trying to update your data in the Symbiota portal. So there can be some confusion when people are like, oh, I tried to match on catalog number to update my data in the portal because I have a snapshot and it didn't work. Like it's saying that there's just brand new records. And that's because whatever you previously used to match upon your DBPK, that is what the snapshot is going to match upon in subsequent times. So this can cause some issues if like the first time you uploaded your data, you put the occurrence ID or the unique identifier in the snapshot, and then the second time you do it, you're like, oh, I need to map on catalog number or something like that. Then those are not going to match because you're trying to match one field to a completely different field. So if you have any issues updating a snapshot and it looks like your data is coming in and it's all new, usually you were using some other identifier and you just need to let us know if you need help to move those identifiers around or match upon the correct unique identifier. And I'm going to copy this link here and put it in the chat, just so you can refer to it as a reminder about the difference between live and snapshot managed collections. Okay, I'll also talk briefly about Darwin Core Archive uploads. You'll see DWC, that stands for Darwin Core. And they're very similar to full text file uploads, but they can also include some extensions. And the two extensions that are supported by Darwin Core Archive uploaders right now are the multimedia extension and the determinations extension. So that's when you have, this is generally used by snapshots, when you have a whole package of data that has occurrence data and multimedia and determinations, so previous identifications, those can all be pulled in as a batch if they're already packaged as a Darwin Core Archive. It currently cannot import things like an identifiers extension, a resource relationship extension, or other Darwin Core extensions with like additional data like traits and stuff. So unfortunately, that means that if you did like a database download of your data and then tried to import it into another or into another Symbiota portal, you might not get all the same relationships as you had in your originating portal. The functionality is a little bit limited. And similar to snapshot data sets, because most of the time these are snapshots, it's going to try to match the DBPK values to whatever is your core ID value in your Darwin Core Archive. Okay, and then IPT imports are basically just the same as a Darwin Core Archive import, but it takes a URL to where it can find that Darwin Core Archive, pulls the Darwin Core Archive into the server, and then uploads it itself. So basically anything I say about Darwin Core Archive uploads also applies to IPT imports. IPT just stands for Integrated Publishing Toolkit, which is a tool that GBIF has managed that allows you to basically put a Darwin Core Archive on the internet so that other systems can access it. That is a way that a lot of other collections who don't use a Symbiota portal publish their data to GBIF. But if you manage your data live in a portal, you never have to really interact with IPTs. Okay, I'm going to pause here because that was a little bit of a whirlwind and see if there's any questions about the types of uploads. Any questions here? Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions, then I'll just move on ahead. Feel free to throw questions in the chat as we go. And let's get into kind of the nitty-gritty of the importing process. Okay, so I've broken it into 6 steps. Upload the file, map all the fields, add a filter, only if you're doing a Darwin Core Archive import, upload to the temporary table, review the preliminary table, and then transfer to the final table. The nice thing about importing data into Symbiota Portal is that it does put it in this temporary table first, where you can look at it and make sure that things didn't get shifted around or something. Okay, let's talk about uploading your file. So the files that you can use are comma-separated values or tab-separated value files. Those files could be packaged into a zip file. If you have a really big file, then you can put it in a zip that will decrease the size of the file and allow your bigger file to be imported into the portal if need be. Generally, I mean, generally people are only dealing with, a couple thousand records at a time, a couple hundred records at a time, so you probably won't need zip files, but just in case, you know that you can do that. The uploaded file does not need to have Darwin Core formatted headers. The headers can kind of be whatever you want, as long as you can remember or you can look at your file at the same time and map them to the fields that are available in the portal. So how do you make a CSV or a TSV file? Well, in Excel, if you have a spreadsheet, you can save a CSV or TSV file just by using the Save As feature. So I'll just show you here. If you click Save As, then there's an option up here that gives you all these different ways that you can save a file. And we recommend using CSV UTF-8. UTF-8 is a way of encoding language, and that one usually causes fewer misrendered characters than others. And then there's also the option of doing a tab delimited, which is ends up in a .txt file. The uploaded file does need to have fields that map to the Symbiota upload fields, and you will go through a process of determining which fields are uploadable. But I'm going to put a link in the chat to this page here. This is our gigantic table of all the available Symbiota import fields, including paleo fields, ones that have a prefix specify, standard fields as well. So if you ever have a question or you're confused about one of the many, many things that you can map fields to, just come to this table and start reading it. And then links are provided if it is a Darwin Core term, then it will be there. Okay, so we're going to upload a file and then we're going to map the fields. So let's upload that file. I just have a file here. That's my demo file. And I'm going to import it into this collection here. I'm showing you in, surprise, surprise, not CCH2 today. I'm working in just a local version of Symbiota on my computer, so I don't have to worry about messing up anyone's data. Okay, so as a reminder, we go into my administration control panel, click this, or you can click the little down caret. And I'm going to demo a full text file import. And then I'm going to go find my file. And if you click Auto Map Fields, it's going to use some logic to try to automatically map your fields based on common keywords. But if you're like, I think it's going to mess up, you can uncheck Auto Map Fields. I'm going to keep it checked. Click Analyze File. Allison has a great question. If a batch upload turns out to have a field misaligned, how can that batch be fixed? For example, the locality data ended up in the location ID field. Um, that's a good use of the temporary table is to make sure that that doesn't happen in between your upload, your review, and then your final upload. But of course, if that doesn't end up happening, you missed it, just contact the Symbiota Support Hub, and that's an action that has to be done on the back end. Okay, so I have here my mapping area. So I'm going to walk through a few tips and tricks, and then we'll walk through this example together. Because mapping is kind of like the meat of the upload process, because mapping is taking your fields and lining them up with some sort of field that can be imported. So visually here, oops. This is a field on the left side that's in my import file, and then I need to select the appropriate field from this really long list in the drop-down menu. So let's talk about these. So catalog numbers. Your catalog numbers should be unique and obviously accurate, so they should correspond to the unique identifier on your specimen. A lot of collections use the barcode number for their catalog number, but if you don't have barcodes or it is your preference, you can alternatively use an accession number or some other unique identifier. The key is that it should be unique, because if you try to do uploads subsequently or you try to search based on a catalog number, you want to make sure you're finding that one specimen record. Values mapped to the other catalog numbers field are going to be parsed into the additional identifiers table. So those are going to be showing up as kind of that little, let's see if I can bring up an example. This table right here, that's where your other catalog numbers are going to be saved to. And if you want to include tag names, you will need to format your fields to have tag name, comma, value. If you have multiple, then it would be semicolon, tag name, colon, other value. So that's if you would want tag name, value, and then tag name 2, another value. And I'll show you an example in my spreadsheet too. Okay, collectors. The primary collector goes in this Darwin Core term called recorded by. So most of the time that's kind of confusing, but recorded by, and then record number. If they have a collector number, it's called record number in Darwin Core Ease. And then all your secondary collectors should be mapped to associated collectors. If you have a field that is one collector, or is all your collectors together, and you don't have them parsed out, you can do one of two things. You can use some fancy spreadsheet magic to just get the first name out and put that in a separate field. Or you can just put everything into recorded by. Depends on how you want to be able to access that in the future. The duplicate matching tools might not work super well if you have everything if you have all of your collectors in recorded by or in the primary collector field. That's the main reason why there's separate fields for collector versus associated collectors. So it's kind of up to you. And if you have like 100 records in your file, I think it'd be worth it to just try to do the parsing in your spreadsheet before you try to upload it. But again, up to you. You can alternatively use the field's collector initials and collector family name. This corresponds to last name if you have those parsed out into 2 different fields. And then there's a third alternative, which is collector first name, collector middle initial, collector last name. And because that's how specify usually does that, they're prefixed with specify here. Julie, I see your comment in the chat, and I'll get back to that kind of at the end of these tips and tricks, because that's a very good point. Okay, with regard to taxonomy, this can get a little bit tricky. Your best bet, honestly, is to use scientific name excluding author. This used to be called SciName, but we clarified it a little bit in 3.4. Or you can use scientific name including author if you have authorships embedded within your spreadsheet. And then that's going to try to match on names in the taxonomic thesaurus. And if it does, then it's going to apply the authorship that's in the taxonomic thesaurus. You can alternatively use a full parsed out taxonomy, so genus, specific epithet, taxon rank, infraspecific epithet, scientific name, authorship. In the spreadsheet that I'm going to show you as an example, it can get a little bit tricky, and I'll show you how. Then if you map a family field, the family in the taxonomic thesaurus will not be applied to your specimens. So family is kind of a funky little override where if you don't put any values in family, it's going to automatically grab the family out of the taxonomic thesaurus and apply it to your specimens. But if you apply a family, then it's going to use whatever you gave it. So just a note of caution if you're like, oh, I just want it to bring in whatever the thesaurus says, then you just want to not include a family field in your import file. Okay, for dates, probably best bet is to use verbatim event date, just in case there's any different formats between all of your dates. But if they're standardized to year, month, day, you can use event date and event date 2 for ranges. If you have a range or anything funky in your date field, then you'll probably want to use verbatim event date. And then you can alternatively use day, month, and year fields, but I don't believe you can do day, day 2, month, month 2, year, year 2. So ranges still need to be either in this standardized format or you put them into verbatim event date. Elevation, you'll probably want to use verbatim elevation, and it will be parsed into minimum elevation in meters if you have units. But there's also another way you can do it. You can use these fields called elevation number and elevation units, and those will be combined and put into verbatim event date if you already have had those split out. Okay, and then coordinates, there's lots of ways you can enter coordinates. There's verbatim coordinates, decimal latitude and longitude. If you have degrees, minutes, seconds in completely separate fields, there are fields for those. If you have UTMs, then those can be put in separate fields. If you have township range section, those can be mapped, but they do all need to be in their own fields. And this is what they're called: lat sec, lat ns, lat deg, long min, long sec, long east west. So just refer to that big long table of available fields, and that'll help you if you have any specific coordinate needs. If you have multiple types of coordinates in the same field, just map it to verbatim coordinates. Your input coordinates do need to be valid if you put them in decimal, latitude, and longitude. If you put them in verbatim coordinates, it's fine. I don't think it does any checking or rejecting. And then note that if you do put in UTM coordinates, it's going to need a zone. Otherwise, it's not going to parse them into decimal degrees. Okay, I think this is the last slide here before I start going into stuff. One way that you can, if you have sensitive species or sensitive locations that you want redacted, then what you need to do is include a field called record security or whatever, but you map it to record security. And if you want that record to be protected, then you need to set that field equal to 1. So that will redact the image, the coordinates, locality, and I think collector and collector number, because then you will not be able to figure out where that specimen was collected. Okay. I'm going to come to Julie's comment. Julie says, the first field in my data is always family, and when it's imported, the source field column shows as 3 weird characters, then the word family. I have to select the target field family. It's not a big deal, but that's what she's seeing. So I have seen this too. And from what I can understand, it's because Excel adds a character to the front of a file, even when it's a CSV file. And so you might try saving as a plain CSV file instead of a CSV UTF. Just try out the different types of CSV files because there are some cases in which that field, I think it's called like a BOM character, BOM, not BOMB. Sometimes that shows up for me and sometimes it doesn't. Lindsay, if you have any other experience, please feel free to chime in.
I do not, but I have also seen that as well. It doesn't seem to affect the import, though. It just looks a little funny when you bring the spreadsheet in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
I
had it
figured I
affected a
figured
few
that's what it
times.
was, something weird like that, and it's no big deal. But I figured it was Excel and not Symbiota.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Um, yeah, Anna says, I never see special characters, but I do consistently need to map the first field. Yeah, if you're having trouble and it actually isn't mapping the first field, then a way that you can fix this is if you open up the field or open up the file in, I think, Notepad++, and you show hidden characters, it will show that bomb character at the front and you can just delete the bomb character. It's super wonky, but I feel like this is something that's started in Windows 11 or something.
I'm not using Windows 11, but another thing Excel does is often add something peculiar, like a little square on your last row. It doesn't seem to affect anything with CSVs, but if you use an Excel file, it's so strange. Yuck,
Yeah,
Excel. But
Excel
anyway,
has some it has some quirks. Okay, Step 3 only really applies to Darwin Core imports, but I do want to show it to you all because I think it's super cool. You can add a filter on your Darwin Core Archive import. So I'm going to show you an example, and it's a little sneak peek behind the scenes of this is how some snapshots get updated in the portals, in their respective portals. So this is an IPT import, which I told you before is the same thing as a Darwin Core Archive import, just a different from a different source. And if I click this initialize import, it's going to basically fetch that Darwin Core Archive, bring it back in the IPT, from the IPT. And then if I click this view details here, it's going to show me the mapping. So if I needed to update the mapping, I could, but I probably don't need to because this is already in Darwin Core format. But if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see this custom occurrence record import filters. And here is we're filtering on family equals some value in this field. And you can filter by multiple values, as you can see, by separating by semicolons. So in this case, there was no phylum or any other easier way to limit it to just pteridophytes because we're in the Pteridophyte Collections Consortium. So what we did is we are filtering based on family. So if this family exists in the family field here, then it's going to include it in that record, in that collection. So this is how a lot of the taxon-based or region-based portals get their snapshots updated. They have some bigger Darwin Core Archive source that contains, like, for example, all vascular plants or all collections. And you can narrow it down using these import filters. Okay, so the next step is to upload to temporary table, review the preliminary table, and then transfer to the final table. And I'm just rushing through those because I want to actually show you what this looks like. Okay, go into my collection. And I have this import file ready. Of a bunch of data with a bunch of fields. And we're just going to walk through how I would map that particular file. Okay, so let me set it here. Okay, so cat num, I want to put as catalog number. I want my other catalog numbers. Okay, and as I mentioned before, if you want multiple catalog numbers and you want them to have tag names, then you'll need to have tag name, colon, the value. And then if you have multiple, you need semicolon. Then it's tag name, colon, value. If you just put a value, that's going to show up in the value, not in the tag name. Okay, family. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the family from this file. Genus, and in this case, I have genus, specific epithet, species author, rank, infraspecific name, infraspecific authorship. Those are all my taxonomy fields. So I don't have a single field that I can map to scientific name. I'm going to have to use all the little fields. So let's start doing that. Okay, so now I have specific epithet. This is scientific name, authorship. Taxon rank. So taxon rank, you might think that that's where you should put like species or genus or family, just like that's the type of thing that the scientific name is. But what it's actually expecting is any infraspecific taxon ranks such as var, subspecies, or if you're dealing with animal taxa, it can be blank. but for plants, it's expecting forma, var, subspecies, something like that. Then I want my infraspecific epithet. And here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Infraspecific authorship. So in this case, well, in the case of just having a species, the authorship is going to be in this species author field. However, in cases of infraspecific taxa, like these, this is going to be the appropriate authorship because whatever we put into scientific name authorship should be the authorship of the lowest taxon to which that specimen applies. So the most specific we can get, it should be the infraspecific taxon in these examples. It would not be appropriate for the scientific name for this specimen here to be Hedwig, because we're actually, the full scientific name is variety gigantea, which is explained by this scientific authorship. So we're in a little bit of a pickle because this authorship is appropriate for this name, but this authorship is not appropriate for this name. So what I would do in this case is probably create a new field. And this is often what you have to do is there's like 1 or 2 fields that you have to do some Excel parsing with. So I might call this like final authorship. And I'm going to create an Excel function that takes, if there is no infraspecific name, then it's okay to take this authorship here. But if there is a infraspecific name, I should be taking this authorship right here. And there are cases in which we have no authorship. That's okay, I guess. That's what we have. So I'm going to say if, and I'm going to use the function is null. If that is null, then I want to use this authorship. And it's giving me a little cue here. So remember, I'm looking for my test. And then if it's true, I want this value. And if it's false, what do I want? I want this value. Actually, I think I did the wrong one. I want it to be this one. Okay, let's see if this works. No, I did something wrong. If is null, this one, then I want this. If it's not null, use this. Oh no, what did I do wrong? Trying to do Excel functions on a live demo, you know? Okay, who can troubleshoot my sheet?
Do we have any Excel masters out there?
I'm probably just doing something super dumb. Oh, I think here's the problem. Is null doesn't exist. Is blank is what I wanted to use. Hadoop. Okay, there's that. So is null is a SQL function. Is blank is the Excel function. So it's looking to see if this is blank. If it is not blank, or if it is blank, then it's going to use this. If it is not blank, it is going to use this. And to Allison's point, the if function in Excel already has then basically built into the function. It's kind of funny. Okay, but that's what I would do. And then if I double click it's going to automatically fill that for my whole column. I don't know why it decided to put zeros here, but I would just go through and get rid of those. Okay, and then I would save this. I would probably save it as a new file just to keep my versions different. But for this demo, I'm not going to. And this is what I'm going to use instead. Oh, good question, Al. Al asks, don't you need both the genus species authorship and the variety subspecies format authorship? No, because the species authorship is going to be inferred from the taxonomic thesaurus. So if I have the lowest taxonomic name matching the thesaurus, it's already going to go, oh, okay, this links to this name, which is linked to this species name, which has this authorship already included in the taxonomic thesaurus. Good question. Okay, so unfortunately, that means that I need to go back and re-upload this file because I changed it in Excel. So what I can do to prevent from having to remap all the things that I already did is I can save a mapping profile. If I click Save Mapping, it's going to say, okay, you can do that. Just give it a title. So you give it a title. Save Mapping. And then if I go to my list of upload profiles, which can either be accessed through the breadcrumbs there, or if I go all the way back, import update, I can find it under saved import profiles here. There it is. And as long as I use a file that has the same headers as the file that I used when I created this saved import profile, it's going to do that mapping automatically. Boop. Okay, and I had gotten all the way here, and now I'm just going to continue. But I already decided that I created a new authorship field, so I should leave this one blank. And this one I'm going to leave unmapped too, because this is my final scientific name authorship now. Det by, map to identified by, collector goes to recorded by, col_num, that's collector number. So I'm going to go to record number. Col date. And this one is a little funkily named. We're going to go to event name, event date. Although I'm going to, just to be safe, go to verbatim event date because I don't remember what format my dates are in. And it's going to try to parse those from verbatim event date into event date. So you don't need to worry like, oh no, it's not going to get any values of event date. Terry asks, if you upload scientific names without authority in the thesaurus, without authority, the thesaurus adds authority in Symbiota. What is the advantage to uploading the authorities from your CSV? I personally like to upload them without authorities so that they get those nice cleaned up authorities that are in the taxonomic thesaurus. The exception, like if you want your own formatted authorities, or if you I think that's pretty much the only reason. It's like you have a specific way you like to format yours, then you would bring them in. All right, we have country, state, county. In this file, I have one called town. So that most closely relates to municipality. Locality, habitat, this is associated species, which is called associated taxa. Latitude, longitude, comments. Comments are mapped to occurrence remarks or notes, but it's called occurrence remarks in the mapping. And then, I have a field over here called UTMs. Oh, it also looks like I have some messy data here. So apparently I have the latitude that's in degrees, minutes, seconds. Oh, that's not messy. It's just in degrees, minutes, seconds. So that means it's appropriate to put it in verbatim instead of in decimal degrees. And then I have one field that is in UTMs, or that provides UTMs. So what you need to do here is there is no UTMs field. You could do one of two things. If you are looking at a huge file and you're like, I don't want to have to parse my Excel file anymore, whatever, then you could just map it to verbatim coordinates, like so. Or if you wanted to be able to parse it from UTMs into decimal degrees, then you'll need to split these out into different fields. So this would be UTM northing, or let's do zone first. Zone, UTM northing, UTM easting. And you can either do some Excel magic, or if it's just a really small number of fields, you could just copy paste. So like I'm going to put that there. And oops, I put those in the wrong ones. And I think it does not want the E or the N. And the zone is 18T, S. My eastern is here. My northern is here. And I can save again. But that means I have to do my mapping again. So let's save my mapping again. Go back. Initialize. Okay, but because the saved import profile, that doesn't take me forever. It just takes me a few other things, a few other clicks, and then I'm going to say UTM zoning, UTM northing, UTM easting, save. Okay. Now I'm going to start my upload. And this is a really important part of the upload process. So we want to make sure that, so we've just uploaded to the temporary table, and now we're looking at the pending data transfer report. So this is telling us that there are 43 completely new records. There's one record that's being updated, so it's going to replace the existing record completely. And you can view those. You can say, which one is being replaced? This one. Which ones are brand new? They're these ones here. And what I always recommend is that you look at these tables. You click this little table icon right here, or you can download them if you want to look at them in a spreadsheet instead. And then you can see, okay, my genus, specific epithet, taxon, rank, infraspecific, they're all being parsed correctly. They're being put in scientific name correctly. I'm going to go through, just look at things. My UTMs got properly parsed into latitude, longitude, so that's nice. And there we go. So if you are okay with that, you can click Transfer Records to Central Specimen Table. If you need to go make more adjustments, go back to your spreadsheet, go back to your saved import profile, and replace the import. If you see, like this will only happen in snapshots or Darwin Core Archive imports, but you might also see previous loaded records not matching incoming records. That is when you're importing a Darwin Core Archive. It's saying, hey, there are this many records in the portal that are not in your Darwin Core Archive, just so you know. So like if you're trying to replace your entire data set, you're not doing it because there's 1,100 that are still in the portal that aren't in your incoming data. Darwin Core Archive imports or snapshot updates don't completely replace all of your data. They only replace data that have, they only replace records that have a corresponding record in your incoming file. So if you have a bunch that you've deleted in your home database and you bring in your new database, they aren't going to have been deleted in the Symbiota portal. So just contact your portal administrator or the hub, and we can help you delete all those things that were just kind of left over. Okay, and then the final piece, like I said, is just doing that final, oops, wrong one. This final transfer records to central specimen table, and that's going to put all your records. That's the final upload. All right, I already talked about saved import profiles as I went. So they are ways to make it easy to upload the same type of file more than once. So it's nice for like kind of the process of uploading, but it's also nice because then you can give repeat collectors a template file that you already have a saved import profile for, and they can just use that and then you import it seamlessly in because you have a saved import profile. So that's a really nice thing to do. I think there is an example in the uploading documentation. And you can also save preset filters and stored procedures, which I won't go into detail right now. Okay, very quickly. This is kind of new, and you'll see this in previous Symbiota Support Group, in a Symbiota Support Group meeting, but there's also this type of data called extended data that you might want to import, and you might need to use a different type of import to bring in that data. That would include associations. That's a different file that you need to prepare if you want to create those linked resources off of your specimen records, including iNaturalist links. So I'm going to copy this, put it in the chat here. And then if you have URLs to images, your best bet is to use the extended data importer to import those URLs. And then if you have a bunch of additional identifiers, like I told you before, you can put them in the other catalog numbers field, and that's fine. But you can alternatively upload them as an extended data import. And that would be going into my profile again. There are these extended data import types. Okay, so we have 1 minute for questions, but we'll have time in the future to talk about upload questions if you have them. So Kate has a really good point in the chat about just uploading a few hundred records at a time. You know, even doing like 3 records to begin with might be a good strategy because you can easily delete those by hand. Terry, do you have a link for the profile example? I don't, because it's specific to your collection. So you'll just create that collection, that profile in your collection. But I think if I go back to the help and resources page, actually, I'm going to share my screen so you can see how I get to this. In the Symbiota docs, I go to collection manager guide, import, data import fields. Then here's the data import fields. Let's see, where was that? Thought we had an example template at some point, but maybe I am wrong.
I thought we did too. There's one for, oh wait, it's not the standard fields. There's that little green button, download full content as CSV. There is one under the collector, or it's like a template for collectors, I think. But that might be under the other field related page.
Let's see if I can find the right template. Ah, here it is. Upload template. Download example template. There you go. There's a link to that. Allison asked, does media URL include specimen image? Yes. So a media URL would be a URL to where your specimen image is hosted, like on a server or something. For your guys' collection, yours are hosted on our servers, so we make those URLs, but if you had any other images that were somewhere else, you could upload those using the extended data importer. Okay, that was a whirlwind. Any other questions? It's a lot to take in, I know, especially making Excel functions to move stuff around. Okay, great. Well, we're happy to answer any questions you may have on email too. As a reminder, we're at help@symbiota.org. Carrie or Kari asks, can I do an extended data import after a skeletal upload? Yes. All that you need in your extended data import is some sort of unique identifier that's going to connect your uploaded data with your extended data. So that can be occurrence ID, catalog number, or the Symbiota ID number. Great. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.